Friday is shaping up as possibly a very revealing day in the Russia investigation. Special counsel Robert Mueller will lay out why he believes former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort has broken his plea deal by lying to investigators. And he'll file a sentence recommendation for President Trump's former personal attorney, Michael Cohen. On top of all of that, former FBI Director James Comey will testify on Capitol Hill. Here's Alex Marquardt with details.
The special counsel's office has been so good about keeping the inner workings of their investigations secret. So through these documents coming out on Friday, this really could be a moment for us to get a much better sense of what is going on inside the Russia probe. Let's first talk about Paul Manafort, the Trump campaign chairman who struck that stunning plea deal 3 months ago with Bob Mueller, only to now see it fall apart. This will be the main event on Friday. The special counsel's office accusing him of breaching that agreement by repeatedly lying to those prosecutors on a whole range of issues. So on Friday, we expect the Mueller team to file a brief in court on what Manafort actually did to violate the terms of that plea deal. We expect at least some of that filing to be public. We don't know exactly when it will come, just that it has to happen before midnight here on the East Coast. Then there's the question of the president's former lawyer and fixer, Michael Cohen, who President Trump has called a weak person for flipping on him. Michael Cohen's due to be sentenced next week in New York, and Mueller's office has to submit their sentencing memo by Friday afternoon in New York. This is for lying to Congress about the Trump Tower Moscow deal. Cohen has now admitted he was updating President Trump, then candidate Trump, about the deal far longer than he originally said, essentially saying that the president was aware of the Trump organization's business efforts in Russia while he was running for president. And then switching gears a little bit, there's former FBI Director James Comey, famously fired by President Donald Trump early in his term. Now, as Republicans are about to lose control of the House of Representatives on Capitol Hill, the Judiciary Committee chairman has subpoenaed Comey one more time to testify about the FBI's handling of Hillary Clinton's emails and their Russia investigation. That will be behind closed doors. Comey had wanted it to be in public. He has said he will talk about the testimony afterwards, and we are expecting a transcript. So it will be a big day on multiple fronts, one that will hopefully give us a better idea of where things stand across the Russia probe. Alex Marquardt, CNN, Washington.
Well, for more, let's head to Washington and David Katz, the former assistant U.S. attorney for Los Angeles. He was appointed by the Reagan administration. David, good to see you.
Great to be with you. Okay,
this could be Freakout Friday for the White House, especially when it comes to the sentence documents for Michael Cohen, which could reveal details about the hush money paid to silence a couple of women who are alleging extramarital affairs with Donald Trump, and also how far Donald Trump was willing to go to conceal plans for that Trump Tower in Moscow. But there is an asterisk with this. The sentence memo, which was filed earlier this week for Michael Flynn, the former national security advisor, was heavily redacted, which seems to suggest if Mueller makes it public, it's not sensitive. If it's sensitive, Mueller won't make it public.
Well, I think there's a lot of validity to what you say. There's going to be really a deluge tomorrow. This is the day that people need to have their scorecard because Mueller is going to have to explain to a federal court why Manafort is in breach. And we're going to find out whether the breach had to do with the conspiracy or collusion investigation. And if it did, of course, then we're going to know in what respects Manafort allegedly lied and what the alternative evidence is. What is the evidence against what Manafort's saying? Because, when I was a federal prosecutor, now I'm a defense attorney, the prosecutors always keep some things in their pocket. And when they had these proffer sessions, they know what your answer has to be to 20 questions. If you lie on those 20 questions, which is what they're alleging about Manafort, that's a heap of trouble for Manafort. So I think it's going to be explained to a federal judge and not be good. And then in addition on the scorecard, as you say, they're going to have to take a position up in the Southern District of New York, what they're going to do with Michael Cohen, what sentence the government believes is appropriate for Michael Cohen. On top of all of that, you have the testimony. Unfortunately, it has to be given in private, but the deal that former FBI Director Comey has with the House lame duck Republicans in this last gasp of the House lame duck Republicans is that Comey will be able to talk about it, and a transcript is supposedly going to be released within 24 hours. So we'll know what Comey had to say and what the Republicans are hammering him about as of Saturday.
Let's go back to the memo that was filed for Flynn. by Robert Mueller. It had, it detailed his exceptional cooperation with the special counsel's office, including, 17 interviews, which led to a recommendation for no prison time. Cohen was questioned by the FBI for 70 hours. This is Michael Cohen. Here's part of an op-ed from the conservative commentator Judge Napolitano of Fox News. Whatever he told them, this is Cohen, and they were able to cooperate, they caused his prison exposure to be reduced from somewhere between 15 and 60 years to 6 months. Such a reduction requires a substantial quid pro quo. What was it? Okay, so what was it? What would Cohen have had to give up? What sort of type of evidence we have given over to get that sort of deal?
Well, we already know a lot of things that Cohen has said. Michael Cohen, the president's former private lawyer, has now pled guilty in 2 separate proceedings, John. One of them was regarding Stormy Daniels and the payoffs that were made to various women right before the 2016 presidential election. And Michael Cohen said that he acted at the direction of Trump and that he did it as a campaign violation. In other words, not to keep it from Trump's wife and family, but to affect the election. And to basically pay hush money to affect the presidential election at the president's direction. Now, Cohen has just pled guilty again and admitted that whereas he told the FBI that the investment in Trump Tower Moscow was not being pursued, that in fact it was being pursued. And I imagine that he's also said that Trump knew that, and that when Trump put his hands up in the air and said, "Oh, Russia, I have nothing to do with Russia. I'm not doing anything in Russia," when he said that in 2016 during the campaign, that it was not true at the time, and that in fact a lot was being done in Russia, and they just lost the deal. That was the deal where Putin was supposedly going to be given a $50 million penthouse in the to-be-built Trump Moscow.
Okay, I just want to finish up with this, this report that we have from the Atlantic, which talks about the White House response here to the Mueller report. Ultimately, whenever it comes, it is coming. The question is when. The Atlantic quotes a recently departed official from the White House as well as others, saying basically there is no plan in place to respond to the Mueller report. Here's part of it. We would always put together plans with the knowledge that he wouldn't use them or they'd go off the rails, he being the president. And at this point with Mueller, they've decided they're not even going to do that. It's like, Jesus, take the wheel, the source added, but scarier. I'm just wondering, is that a sign that this White House sees maybe the Mueller report more of a political problem than a legal one? What do you make of that?
Well, I think the Mueller report is going to be a very serious legal as well as political problem. What happened with President Nixon is that he was never going to have to leave office until all of a sudden, oops, the evidence came out, the world could see it, and the Republicans in the Senate were prepared to vote against him if it came to an impeachment trial in the Senate. And when Nixon realized he didn't have support even among the Republicans, that was when Nixon had to resign. Things could get to that point with Trump, and where there's really not very much that could be said in contradiction. If you start to think of every bad thing that Michael Cohen could say and that he could corroborate with other evidence, maybe he has tapes, maybe he has contemporaneous memos, maybe he has other people who are so scared of state charges that they're willing to tell the truth about what happened, and there's no way that Trump could pardon any of those people because they're facing state charges. Then you imagine Flynn breaking bad against the president and saying that all of these things were done with the connivance of the president, both as a campaign and for that first month that Flynn was in office as the NSC chief in our government. If you imagine all of those things breaking bad and some other witnesses coming forward and the prospect of charges against Donald Trump Jr., against Kushner maybe, against people that Trump holds near and dear, there's a basis for a deal. There's a basis for a deal where Trump would try to save other people and himself, but he would relinquish office.
Okay, David, some interesting times ahead, especially for the occupant of the White House right now. David Katz, appreciate you being with us. Thank you.
My pleasure.